City of Stevens Point, Special, Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded June 20th, 2023.
Order the special police.
No, don't sweat it. Don't sweat it.
I'll just go through one way.
First thing on the agenda is the roll call. Candy, please call the roll.
Kirschling.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Rosick. Here. Ostrowski.
Here.
Zenner.
Here.
Everyone is here and accounted for. Second item on the agenda is working on the revisions to the policies and procedures for the Police and Fire Commission. Mr. Beveridge has provided us with a new revised copy of the policies to work off of. It's a starting point. There's a lot of good things in it. Now it's time to start commenting and changing and telling him that he did a nice job, but we're going to shred it anyways.
Story of my life.
So, Mr. Beveridge, would you like to start? Comments, questions, whatever?
Right now, I just need to battle this laptop, which is a thorn in my side for quite a while now.
AI is taking over your laptop. Very nice.
No, it's not so much that. It's more like they gave me the you can engineer a skyscraper size machine when really I needed the take it to a meeting size machine. And now it's
Are you saying that's not your
arguing
personal
with me.
laptop, but a city?
This is not my personal one. It's got city barcode, label maker, everything on it. So
Beautiful.
give me 1 second here.
Government issue. Once he goes through all the layers of protection from the city administrative systems, and he can access his own files, we might be able to start.
Is there very many changes from the original copy to the new copy?
Do you want a hard copy? I have an extra.
He doesn't like hard copy. All of us dinosaurs.
Well, it's just like, oh, well, you know, I have this easily accessible via my email account, and I'll just pull it up here, no sweat, and no, not quite. Okay.
It's a nice theory. I should have brought my cheater glasses because this stuff is microscopic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got an extra 2 pair on the car, so.
Yeah. Come prepared. Does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Kirschling asked one.
Are there many changes from the original copy that you gave us to the one we have today?
I apologize. I'm finally just now, this instant, getting.
Well, there's a lot of
the
additional
document I
sections
need.
that he worked on, so there's
What's that?
There's more comments.
there's additional,
And
yeah,
additional
different sections
changes.
that he's now worked on.
Yeah, so the comments and edits that I had provided to you at the previous meeting have not been further changed. But what I did is I picked up I picked up with the rest of the material going forward. So I can't tell you exactly which page the first batch ended on and the second batch began on, but that's basically what's going on here. Now, like I mentioned in the email I sent yesterday, and again, I apologize, I was just very crunched for time in the last week and a half here, but what I'd like today is to start going through some of these comments where I just need policy input from the group. Obviously there are aspects of this where I can say, here are my recommendations for tightening up the legal language and just making this more clear, making it more complete. But there are some things where it's just, what would you prefer to do? So does anyone have any objection to just me kind of going through those sidebar comments just one by one and trying to just go through them?
I think would be the way to go is you go through it page by page, go through your sidebar comments, and then take input from the commissioners.
That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. So,
The only thing I would add to that is let's limit this to like an hour's worth. Because I don't want to try and get through the whole thing. We can come back and have another meeting. because it's not quite done yet anyways.
Got it.
So I don't want to overload us or get to the point where we're just skipping stuff because we're burnt out. Because
No,
this
no,
is
I think that's a good time frame. Okay, so starting off then, right away on page 2 of the actual content, I had spoken to Corey of, this provision here about pay for the body, and he said that you're paid $30 per meeting, which strikes me as a little goofy, where we have to have, like a tally of, okay, how many meetings were this month? Did you have a special? Did you not have a special? Did, for some reason, you not have the normal monthly meeting?
It's been like that since for how long?
Beginning of time.
Yeah, so when you look at time value of money, we're working for pennies on the dollar from what we used to be working for.
It's a real resume builder, though,
Oh, yeah. I don't think anyone that's on the body right now really cares too much about
Yeah.
it, but I'm not even sure that's our decision.
Sure.
As much as that's for the Finance Committee and the council to decide what this group should be paid.
I think that's accurate from a legal perspective. If I was just, talking to Corey, my suggestion would be, why don't we just make that a flat rate? Then, they're not having to, get information about how many meetings you had. They're not having this variable amount there. Perhaps that needs to be $50 a month or something like that.
Whatever the council, I wouldn't object to whatever the council
So-
came up with, as long as it was a reasonable.
Right.
So are you looking at things, because I know in our existing, it kind of talks about like if someone needs to meet with the chief, such as our liaisons, that's, right now we have it in here that meet with the chief at least monthly. So that's an additional meeting that's outside of our regular meeting that they're getting paid for. So there's, I guess, are you looking to eliminate the language to determine the meeting? Are you looking at it just to include these meetings that are public? Is that where there's some questions in regards to? Because
Okay, yeah, now I'm seeing individually scheduled meetings with personnel of the fire and/or police departments.
Yeah, plus there was times like when we were interviewing or welcoming candidates, we would take the candidates out, show them the town, et cetera. I was told that was all right to turn in. And then there was liaisons. I was told that was all right because you're meeting with the chief. There was several things that,
You're actually doing work.
yeah, which would, if we switched to a monthly thing, it would dramatically be a cost savings to the city. I'm not saying that we're doing this for money, but it would change dramatically how you're paying.
Right, because I think that's the thing, there's a lot of meetings that take place based on the nature of it, or even, when our liaisons are working through, doing reviews, of each of the chiefs for, merit increases and for doing, goals and things like that, so.
Yeah, and so then you have this per meeting, and then it's, compensation is paid in a minimum block of 4 hours or the actual time spent, whichever is greater, which is suggestive of there being an hourly rate to be calculated, which that doesn't sound like it's actually the case for the practice.
I had an issue with that as well. It says a minimum of 4 hours or actual time spent, whichever is greater. That's saying to me that you have to have a minimum of 4 hours. And I would agree with you. That language is, that should change. I don't know that there needs to even be a minimum. It's just put it as another approved meeting.
Well, for one thing, lately, our typical POC meeting's been running about 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
If you go a minimum 4 hours, we're not even meeting that.
And 2 years ago, they were running
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were
way
running
excess of that.
2.5, 3 hours, some of them.
I understand everyone should get compensated for their time and their talents. My problem with this particular thing is that I really believe that this is something for the Finance Committee to take and determine, and that this should be done with, they should make up their minds on that, on what they need to pay the people to be on this commission and what the value is to that, to the city. So I don't even really want to get into the discussion other than the fact that we should be fairly compensated for the job that we're doing.
So I'll tell you what my plan is then. Corey had said, it's $30 per meeting. Obviously, the amount of meetings is variable month to month, but also from member to member. So what I'll do is talk to him about getting my hands on just some of the, last few years' actual experience. What is the typical monthly amount been? And try to come up with something. While it is set by the city council and all that, we certainly don't want there to be some sort of change in that regard that, upsets everyone or cuts that amount drastically or anything like that. And also, since we do have language in here for it, we just need to make sure that those are coherent. So I think with that, we can move on to...
One more quick thing. It seems to me that if you just take out the second to the last sentence, compensation is paid at a minimum block of 4 hours, just take that sentence out. And the rest of it kind of encapsulates what we're looking for. That, to me, that's really what you'd have to do.
Okay. Which would basically be status quo with the ambiguous part removed. So not a bad idea.
I would still suggest taking this to the Finance Committee to evaluate
A pay raise? I agree with you.
the pay for this commission, because it hasn't changed at least in 8 years that I've been on the commission, and it's probably longer.
Yeah, it's been longer.
And so that's, I think they need to review all of the committees, and I know they've reevaluated their own pay and the pay of the mayor and other bodies and the pay scale for all the employees. They always seem to miss the committees and commissions when they do those. Just a little history.
Probably not a bad idea.
Okay.
I got one question above that paragraph, when you talk about striking the 3 or more and then putting in the quorum.
Right.
Yeah. Is there something in the statutes that define our quorum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically just 50% plus 1.
Okay.
Although it changes. For this body, that's what it is. I can double check on that.
I understand, because for different bodies, it's different.
Right, exactly.
Got it.
And I was just going to mention too, Logan, when I came on the commission, we're given, I think there's 18 spots, like for your meetings, you keep track of them. When you get to 18, you turn it in. So it's not anything monthly, we're turning in for meetings. We're just getting that log, and then once it's completed, I don't know if everyone else is doing that, but that's kind of how I go.
Well,
I think everybody does
I turn
it.
it in each 6 months, because that's the way I was told.
Yeah, I think everybody's been doing it
But just so you're,
differently.
right, so he's aware that we're not just getting this monthly, right?
Okay, yearly, whatever
Yep.
timeframe basis upon which it's most conveniently calculated.
And I wouldn't go by the accuracy of it, because I know that I have just had either Leanne filled it out for me, or General, we took attendance, and you look over the attendance charts, and I don't know that even being a liaison, I didn't add on my meetings with the chiefs or any of that for pay.
And I would agree, I was in the same boat. I didn't add any of those meetings either.
I do know commissioners that do.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm just saying it's been
I've never
done
had
many
it
different ways, so that it's not going to be accurate anyway.
Sure. Okay.
You can get a general guess, but that's all it's going to be.
Okay, 1.04, new members of the commission. This list here are the documents that will be provided to new members of the commission. basically just the question of, what things do we think we actually need to include there? I think certainly we're in an era where those things could be provided in electronic format. This all current contracts one is a little weird. Like, here's the contract with US Cellular for this cell phone and all that. So I'm thinking maybe just the contracts for, like the collective bargaining agreements.
Employees.
That certainly makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what it was intended to mean, was the employees, not necessarily like phone contracts and the ambulance contract and all of those kinds of things. Anybody else have any comments or questions about that?
No, I mean, I think it's whether it's physical or, on online, like especially for the meeting minutes and things like that, dating back 6 to 12 months.
It's all available online, yeah.
Right.
It's already online now.
Yep.
I just think, right, whoever, and I don't know if that lands with you, Jerry, when someone does come on to say, hey, go out there, look at the last 12, or, educate yourself. And I know you've been good about getting like the policies and procedures and the handbook.
Was that something that the administrative assistant like Candy could do?
Well, in the past, Leanne did that.
Yeah.
And Candy's been doing a lot of it now, I believe.
To me, that would be the
Stuff.
most efficient.
Yep.
So
Because
do
you
we
have
cha-
access right to it, it's
Point
right
of
there, you print
contact.
it off, put it in the handbook, or maybe some other binder.
So do we change the commission and remove that, and it's the administrative assistant provides that? I mean, do we want to, like, to where is that direction?
Well, I don't think we need to change it because it's our responsibility that the new member gets it.
Okay.
That she's actually doing the action is not as important as the fact that we're the ones that are supposed to be making sure it's done.
Okay.
So I think that responsibility needs to stay where it is.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So while I was wrangling electrons, it sounds like there has been a consensus reached.
Technology's wonderful. That's the consensus.
Okay, so certainly we want to provide the collective bargaining agreements to people. That handbook for PFCs that I believe it was you who had shared that with me or mentioned it, and I was able to pull that up and add it to my little cache of documents. I think certainly it makes sense to share that. I mean, it does get pretty deep into the weeds. I mean, that's a serious document, but it's pretty comprehensive. So I think using that, the CBAs, and providing people copies of statutes themselves.
We're relying on the internet for all of
Right,
that.
exactly.
That the online accessibility to most of these documents now is much better thanks to Sarah and Mr. Quirk, that they do that in the media center so that everybody has access, including community members, which is great. So we need to direct them to them, but we don't
Right.
need to hand them a hard copy of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I still have hard copies of all sorts of ordinances and things that I got when I was first became an alderman back a few years ago.
Provide links, if the links don't change, you provide the links to the document,
Sure.
and then they could just click on it, or they'd have it right there.
Yeah, we can have a
Links to the
handout.
minutes, Links to the state statutes,
An introductory email or something we could send to them.
with
Yeah.
just the links, and then
Welcome aboard. Here's your orientation email
Good luck.
with links to things on the city website, links to a couple things on, state legislature website.
something like that, I think
Sure.
that way it takes a lot of the paper stuff off of,
I think that makes sense, and that's something I can put together and then share with record staff here
Yeah, some of
when they
that's not
onboard
gonna
people.
change. The city email, their minutes, that won't change. probably, well, I shouldn't say will.
Yeah. And then some of the things can just be attachments. Right. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so 1.05, these records of the commission. Police Department Administrative Assistant. Is that a title that is still used?
That is for the girls out in the office, but I'm the Records Bureau Supervisor.
Okay.
But that's a different position than taking care of our stuff.
And you
But
keep
it's-
everything right now as well, so why don't we just change the position?
Police
On the
Department
document.
Administrative, are you?
So change it to Police Records Bureau Supervisor.
Yes,
Okay,
that's my title.
gotcha. And I'm not sure, I mean, I don't possess any of the records of the commission personally.
Right.
And it says in that next statement, the custodian of the records will be the president of the commission. Figuratively, but not really. I mean, they're in her office, in her file cabinets. They're not, I don't possess any of those.
Right. That custodian phrase is just a term of art from the public records law, as I'm guessing you're aware. Essentially, that would just mean, hey, you got an open records request or the commission received one. You're the one who would be talking to me about how we're going to respond to it. That's really all that means.
It's not a possession thing.
Right,
It's a.
exactly.
You are the one that is supposed to make sure they're there and they're accurate.
Point of reference, in other words. Point of referencing, that person would be.
Yeah. You basically, under the open records law, you need to identify who the custodian is, so to speak.
Declare that, okay.
Yeah, so like we have these public records postings that go at various points of contact physically. And it, for the clerk's office, it's the clerk. For my office, it's me, for et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So for the PFC, it would just be the president of the commission. And that's more of just a legal responsibility aspect than it is any sort of physical or immediate access communication. Okay, so we'll change that position title there, and we should be good. Yeah, and then I highlighted the deputy custodian. That's not actually a thing under the statute. There's no such thing as a deputy custodian. So I think probably what I'll do is just remove that line.
Very good.
Yeah, right there at the top.
Okay. This is getting into a little bit more interesting fare. 1.06, Department Liaison. There's this one line in there that says the liaison will be an advocate for the assigned department, which, sounds, real nice on its surface, but, what does that really mean in the context of, perhaps the liaison disagrees with some management decisions, disagrees with some policy positions that the department has staked out? Is there tension there? Or is this a line we can leave in and just say, well, it doesn't bind anybody's hands? Is it really something that needs to be messed with? I think this is one of those spots where I'd just like to hear from the body, like, how do you feel about that bit of language? Do you feel that it sends the wrong message in terms of this being policy setters rather than, policy cheerleaders? So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
I have an opinion. I would take that line, most of the line out, and for it to say the liaison will be available to relay relevant information to the commission which they deem necessary. Let me read that again. The liaison will be available to relay relevant information to the commission which they deem necessary. Now, there's times that the liaison will have a conversation with the chief that it's not, you don't have to have a meeting about it. And the rest of the commission, it really doesn't matter. It's just something the liaison is going to speak to the chief about. I agree with the attorney that to be an advocate as assigned to the department, and I completely agree with his comment that could go against, that could create potential problems. And that's why it talks about what the liaison's job is, but then again, that the liaison needs to relay relevant information to the commission. And we've had situations in the past where we've had commissioners go out on their own and not relay relevant information to the commission, and things got really messed up really fast. And that's why I put in there that the one word is relevant, and then which they deem necessary. I don't think that the liaison needs to relay to the commission every single conversation, because it's really a total waste of time. It's something that the commission needs to know, something that there may be possible action on, and I think that that's part of the liaison's job.
Are you saying to add that, to remove the last sentence, the liaison will be an advocate for the assigned department? Take that out and then put your sentence in place of that? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay. I just wanted to understand where it was going to go.
I would leave the liaison and then take out will be an advocate for the assigned department and replace it with the other language.
I agree. I think that line needs to be removed. The only question, what was the last part of what you wanted to add, Joe?
The liaison will be available to relay relevant information to the commission which they deem necessary.
Which the
liaison deems necessary. And I think the liaison has a duty to the commission, to the departments, to the city. If there's something, I think, I know it's a little bit broad, but what I'm trying to encapsulate there is not every conversation that the liaison has with the chief needs to come back to the commission. And if there's other language, I'm obviously...
The only concern I have is that last part, which they deem as necessary, and I don't think anyone has their own agendas or anything like that, but now that liaison is determining, or she's determining what they deem is necessary, and I think by hitting it as relevant information in and of itself, I think addresses the concern that you bring up.
Okay.
But when you put in that last line, suddenly the judge and juror becomes that one liaison. That's my only concern on that language.
And are we taking it, because my understanding, when I was liaison, like issues, they rolled up, communication happened with the president, and then determining whether it needs to be an agenda item or not. So I guess, Jerry, what's your thoughts on that? Because I remember reading somewhere in here, like if an issue or concern arises, you're supposed to let the president know right away. And then from that point forward, because otherwise then, are you just, I guess is the liaison just going to set the agenda item and say, here we go, right, here's the conversation. What does that look like?
I think you have to go to the president. The president's the one who sets the agenda.
I think there's a second determination there of whether or not it's something that is...
If the liaison needs to go through the president to determine if it's something that needs to be brought forward to everyone, is that where you're leaning towards? Or?
Well, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure that belongs in this particular descriptor. I need to assemble the entire...
Because right now it's giving the liaison right to bring it to the commission, to the full body. So that would technically...
I think this is talking not about procedure. This is a description of the responsibilities of the liaison, not the process in which something comes from the liaison to the commission. I think we're getting too entwined. I could be wrong. This may exactly be the place for that, but I think that this is an introduction of the liaison position and the responsibilities of that person. not the process of bringing forward an issue that you want to put on the agenda that needs to be addressed.
Right behind that is the department liaison is expected to form the following, and, well, wouldn't that come under that section then?
And it might. I don't,
'Cause
that's what I'm asking.
That's a job
the-
description right
the-
there.
The city attorney for, but that may not even
Yeah.
be in that part. It may not be in the part until we get to the procedures and processes of bringing an item to the agenda.
I guess I'm wondering why Tom and Joe don't like the word advocate.
Well, if,
I don't think
I guess
it-
read the attorney's
Sidebar.
notes. Yeah.
I have a problem with the word advocate too, because it has
Well, I'm just
changed.
asking why, because I
Yeah.
don't think the advocate is bound to follow the chief's idea. He can disagree.
Well, but if there's a situation where there's misconduct, advocate really is, that's not the right word.
The word, the
Okay,
word
I'm just
advocate.
asking why it isn't.
I guess I kind of follow on what Logan had said. I'm certainly being a liaison of the fire department in this case, I'm not going to be a cheerleader. Is that word, I guess I view it more looking is just blindly following a path that's set by the chief.
Right.
To be an appropriate liaison is, be a sounding board, but also be able to assist in areas that he or she may disagree with.
I think that the general term advocate has changed through the years, where it used to mean that you would bring a message forward and help explain the purpose and
Because I've held
reason.
that position in associations, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem bringing the opposite side.
And now it seems to more mean that you bring the positive aspects of being an advocate, that you are in support of that, and that
Okay.
that's the side you're on, as opposed to bringing a message forward.
See, and I
no
think
matter
where
what it
you're,
is.
where, if you look at the sentence before the liaison will be an advocate, it talks about how we're going to support the assigned chiefs, the chief as needed. We're still going to support them. It's just if there's a hairy situation that arises.
I was just trying to figure out why you guys didn't like the word advocate.
Because we're not an advocate for it.
Well, again, having held that position in some organizations, I wouldn't agree with that. But I can understand what Jerry's saying about the modern change of thought on that.
I want to jump back to a comment Tom made a little while back now about this, they deem necessary. You got to remember, this doesn't preclude a chief from contacting the commission directly, whether that be via a memo, a request for an agenda item, or just commentary on, the monthly report or some particular agenda item. So, anything else in that regard? I've got your exact language typed in here, and I think it sounds appropriate. All right.
And these aren't going to be set in stone yet. We can always change our minds if something comes to you later, if you're thinking about this or stewing on it, or advocating for it later.
Right.
You can change it. So there's still time to be flexible, but this discussion is working out very well so far. Continuing on.
Okay, so this last line on the bullet points there, review with the chief the timeliness of evaluations and if they are realistic. I was just kind of perplexed by that. I envision a liaison sitting down with the performance evaluations of, I guess, every single person in a department and going through them to talk about timeliness and realisticness. I just wasn't quite sure what we were getting at there. Which is what led to my comment, which was, this feels like it was suggestive of like one thing that happened one time and then some bit of language got added, where there was some evaluations that were late and then they were done haphazardly. And somebody said, we need some policy to fix this. So I feel like that's something that could just be removed or changed to reflect a bit more open-ended review evaluations with the chief and communicate general impressions to the broader body if needed. I haven't really put pen to paper on some sort of replacement for that, but I'm not sure if that's a line that's really just needed at all.
I think the line above it does the exact thing what needs to be done. I think that line that you're talking about could be eliminated because the line above is sweet and simple.
And just a note for the union staff, the evaluation form and process is something that's contained in the bargaining agreements. Now, that doesn't mean that input from this body as to what you'd like to see in terms of any changes on that is unwanted or inappropriate, but it's not something that can just be done unilaterally. It has to be bargained.
That was my understanding too, that, yeah, we can't come in and start saying, when changing staff evaluation processes.
Right.
I mean, that would,
Yeah.
so,
I think this is just a comment about make sure they get done, that they're not something to just push off on the side, or that part of the responsibility of the liaison is to make sure that the chief is getting the evaluations done and that it's good for the department and good for all the employees to have those done timely and correctly. It's not a matter of changing them, but following the rules that are there.
because the chief, and Tom, if you want to just, they're responsible for their assistant chiefs. And then everything falls below chain of command, right, of who is doing the reviews for all line staff.
Correct. The final review is done at the chief, though, too, so.
Right, the signature and.
Right.
And that, okay.
So, ultimately, it would all come to that one bottleneck. So really just to include, I think that was already said, review the staff evaluation format and process. And you can completely eliminate that last line because
I would agree with
it's
that.
essentially what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay?
The last line
Scratch
sounds
it.
like they had a problem, wasn't getting done or something at one time.
Yeah. There may have been a chief that wasn't following through, or
I have one question to go back to that. The department liaison will be expected to perform the following. It says meet with the chief at least monthly. What I'd like to see in there is be in contact with the chief at least monthly. I looked up the definition of meet, and the definition of meet is be in the presence or company of someone by chance or arrangement. Now, I might have a conversation with the chief over the phone, but according to this, that doesn't constitute as meeting with them.
Yeah, and there might be months you don't really have anything other than a quick statement.
That's right. So if it's okay with the commission, I'd like to say, instead of me, be in contact with the chief.
I don't have any opposition to that. I think it makes sense.
anybody else?
Nope, I agree.
Okay, sounds good. Moving on. Section 2.
So obviously, my only comment I put here was, how does this square up with real life? I have sent emails out to the chiefs and Corey, but I think really what we need to do is probably get the four of us sitting down for 45 minutes and just going through that and me taking a bunch of notes from them. We need this one to just reflect accurately what we're actually doing. And if there's anything we're doing that doesn't make sense, change it. But when it comes to budgetary issues, typically, at least, I don't work directly with that other than when I'm asked to fill out, what do I need for, office supplies this year? But my understanding is that the auditors keep us on the straight and narrow pretty well, and that happens yearly. I know there were comments about the transfers between accounts within departments. And in particular, Bob, you'd mentioned to me you wanted me to take a closer look at that. And I haven't, like I said, haven't sat down and had that meeting yet. So I anticipate we can do that pretty soon.
Well, in real life, some accounts are going to go over, some accounts are going to shut.
Yeah.
As long as the commission's always operated that I've been on, as long as the overall budget's being followed, you know, if ammunition goes over, but cleaning supplies goes under, as long as you stayed within the budget, no problem. But the way this is written, you couldn't go over on anything.
I agree with Bob. I don't want to handcuff the chiefs. If they need to move money around, then I think we need to give them that latitude.
See, there's some serious technical questions about this policy because the Finance Committee allots a certain amount of dollars to go to the police department and the fire department. At that point, that allotment of money is out of their hands and out of the hands of the comptroller treasurer. And it should be justified that the chiefs and this commission decide how that money is allocated if an emergency comes up and they need to move things from one account to another account. I don't get how it affects anybody else because the city's already approved that that money has gone to that department, and as long as they're not doing anything illegal or otherwise, where does the comptroller try to have control over that anymore? Because it's already been signed off by the Finance Committee to those departments, and this interfeuding is really, it's counterproductive.
Right, because right now we have in your current guidelines is to manage funds within the overall budget and not to transfer funds between line item accounts. So that's,
Exactly my point.
yeah.
That's,
The exact language in the statute regarding your optional powers that you have in that regard is that you have the authority to audit all bills, claims, and expenses of the fire, police, and combined protective services departments before the same are paid by the city treasurer. So essentially, it's you audit the bills, it goes to Corey, they send out the checks, that type of thing. So whatever you'd like to see in there, we can put together. But if nobody is perceiving any sort of problem with the status quo of how the chiefs are operating right now, then it's mostly a matter of making sure that that language accurately reflects the status quo.
the problems that I have heard are coming from the other side. It's not what the chiefs are doing, it's what the comptroller treasurer's department wants them to do. And those two things are not working well with each other at times, that they need to be on the same page as who has authority at what point. I mean, because as far as I understand, when I was on the Finance Committee, that once they sign off on that and the council says, okay, that's the budget, the money has been released to that department and it's theirs to deal with at that point. If the rules have changed since then, that's fine, but that's not been made clear. I just, there needs to be some discussion so that everybody understands what method and what we're doing citywide for those kind of decisions.
Do you think this could be fixed with just a simple conversation?
Oh, very well, could be. But if we're going to make this match that policy, what I'm saying right now is nobody's sure that the
Sure,
words
I
in
understand.
here match that policy, and we need clarification, either state statute, whatever, that everybody's going to do things the same way so there's not conflicts every time somebody decides to go get a new cell phone or whatever, who's responsible for it or what.
So I think kind of what I just wrote down is we need some clarity on where the comptroller treasurer's authority ends and where suggestion begins. Because certainly there's always going to be these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you try to have a little more left over at the end of the year type thing?
Well, there's got to be checks and balances. We all understand that. I'm not looking for anybody to do anything illegal or improperly, but there's a lot of inner headaches that have gone on throughout the years that don't need to happen because of personality conflicts or because of two different interpretations of rules.
That makes sense.
So I'll add another section that says personality conflicts prohibited.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
So certainly some more work for me to do in that regard, and I expect the next time we meet that I'll have a lot more for you to chew on language-wise for that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this kind of confusing message that's appearing on my screen here. Okay, comment thread contains, okay.
Still awake?
Okay. So this first section here, it's just a matter of, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this line about the president or designee being involved in contract negotiations, but I could picture sometime off in the future with some other different members of this commission and a different president, somebody wanting to be there in the room every time stuff is going on, whether it's like, let's say it's JB and his staff talking to Pierce about a new piece of equipment, or myself and a gazillion other people, which we're going to be doing soon, sitting in the room with the county talking about the EMS contract, whatever it is. My general experience has been that those types of things work best when you have the full-time staff handling it, who are handling the communications, the nitty-gritty, the day in, day out, and that the appointed or elected bodies be brought in when it's, hey, we have an important crux in this for which we need input on you before we can get to a final draft of this, or here is a final draft, what do you think? Or here's the dollar amount for this capital acquisition, here's why we need it. So again, it's like, at the current moment, this hasn't caused a problem. It's just one of those things that maybe opens the door to a problem later on down the line. Because I can just picture the wrong type of personality. They come in and they don't want to just be there. They got a lot to say about it, and it turns into a little bit of like, the other side is looking at you like, who's this guy, or woman?
Would it help, instead of having it just say contract accountability, that we change it to different headings like labor contract accountability, business contract accountability, something like that, so that
Narrow the field.
we're not just talking about contract.
That's in general.
So here too, maybe some who have been on here longer, contracts such as the Portage County Ambulance Service Provider Agreement shall be negotiated by the fire chief, a representative from the PFC, and other officials appointed by the mayor. Like Joe, being a liaison in the past, have you actually, negotiated those contracts, or Ben, or Jerry?
No.
I just is,
Yeah.
like, should we,
Yes,
so you have?
Yeah,
Okay.
back when they first started doing the ambulance contract, but that was one time, and that was years
Right.
ago, and
I
they,
was in on the last two ambulance contracts.
yes, but they've changed the way that they've done those. It hasn't been the same, and the county has changed their attitude, so it's been kind of morphing all the way through it, which I'm sure most of them do. Tom, do you comment?
I am thinking the only time I can ever recall a police and fire commission member involved in any kind of negotiation whatsoever, to include labor, or I think maybe when the dispatch center went to the county, I believe there may have been a member of the police and fire commission present.
Because we're not even involved in the labor, discussions
No, I've never-
whatsoever, the PFC, because it comes to us to accept what's been negotiated between, you know, the
In
union.
the last 10 years, I have not had
Right.
a member of the Police and Fire Commission at a labor
Right.
negotiation, so.
It's kind of like, where does the experts lie, right? It's this, that's not our, I
Well,
understand.
It depends. It's also that what authority
The
do we
actual
actually
power.
have as this body? Because when it comes to the monetary aspect of it, that goes back to the Finance Committee. So we don't have any say over that. And, you know, the policy procedures tell us about what they can do, and what's in the contract for that is negotiated with the labor union and the chiefs, and they bring it back to us anyways. So,
But I have a quick question on this sentence that says during the course of negotiations. Into that paragraph, it says all contracts entered into the behalf, on behalf of the commission require open commission discussion and action to approve a recommendation for approval by the mayor and common council as appropriate. Is that the way it's always gone?
that applies to the financial aspect of the
Right,
contract.
but not everything.
No,
Not the actual negotiations.
but it would be the financial aspects, because that's all they have the authority over, correct?
Well, then do we put in there financial? I don't know. I don't know how, I don't have an answer, but you see where my concern
Well,
is.
and that's why I suggest the different headings of different contracts, because they line up differently depending on what they are.
That middle paragraph here is just the type of thing that always jumps out at me when I'm going through anything, where it's like, this is just a clumsy way of trying to explain things that are governed by open meetings law and 6213 with regards to optional powers. There's no need to take things that are controlled by statute and then rewrite it and stick it in here.
Right.
So open session, closed session, like, no, that's open meetings law. And the worst thing is, you might write something in here that actually handcuffs you even more than what the law does. And, you know, if there's some sort of strange thing for which a chief wants closed session input on a negotiated manner, you can always just make the request, either direct to the president or through the liaison, hey, I need to get this agenda item on. We're dealing with this situation and it's a little strange. Can we have a closed session to talk about it? That's fine. We don't have to have language in here that says that you're allowed to do that. You can just do that. So I think probably just removing a lot of the language in this section makes sense. You know, referencing the optional powers of the commission to do this type of thing makes sense. You know, and then you've got contracts are generally ratified by these, various parties. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's basic contract formation law. So it's one of those sections where it seems like it makes sense to have a section called contract accountability, but most of the content that's in here right now could probably be removed and replaced with things that are either a little more informative. Yeah, but I can envision shrinking this thing down to a third of its current size. And also with regards to the ambulance service agreement, officials appointed by the mayor, we've never had the mayor take some action to say, you, I'm writing a proclamation, here's our team for this. It's more, hey, we generally know who is useful to have in the room for that. Let's get together and talk about it ahead of time. Okay, we've got a meeting with the county folks at this time, don't forget it, put it on your calendar. It's not as official as what this seems to suggest. Now, do you think that having a representative from the PFC at those meetings is a good idea? And before you answer that, let me know, or let me tell you, the last time we went through that, I think it was something like 18 meetings. I'm not even exaggerating. It was like 18 meetings.
I think the statement of a member of the PFC may attend is what would be suitable, because that way if we want someone there for firsthand knowledge, we're able to, but not required to be there for all of the meetings, or because a lot of them, I mean, I see it as being, we would be there, but we have no power anyway, because if they're talking about financial things, you're going to be sitting there reading your phone or doing whatever, and you might get paid a nice little stipend for being there from the finance committee if they decide to give you any money for a,
Not worth it.
But isn't this too where like our
I
chiefs would
can
be
tell you from
coming?
experience, 2 contracts back, I was the loan representative,
Oh, okay.
and that worked fairly well. Last contract, Ron Carlos and I were on because it was looked at that there was going to be more push and shove. And so we were, and that time, the mayor acted as our, kind of like our general representing our side. When I see this, it sounds like the mayor appoints the whole thing. No, I was asked, in my case, I was asked each time by the president, and the mayor said, yeah, okay. But I do believe in my thing that having the ability to have a PFC member there is pretty good. Sometimes you add that 1 or 2 little ideas that nobody was thinking about. The last couple contracts, however, basically have been over, can we do 1.5% or can we do 3%? That was the whole battle, as you well know, you were in on those. Now I'm told that they're going much smoother now.
Yeah, there's been some changes in terms of personalities, so we're expecting it to go much better this time. So what I'll do for our next meeting is just put together a revised draft version of this that, like I said, strips it down a good amount, but leaves some things intact. And certainly we can have a line in there that says, a PFC member can attend the ambulance negotiations, which I think does make a lot of sense.
I would think, the only change to that, I would make it be member or members, not a quorum, could be there.
Sure.
So that.
Yeah, you don't ever want to
Yeah.
have to notice something like that, because those aren't open to the public. So,
Right, but if we had 2 people, we could have at least 2, but if we needed, but not a quorum of the commission.
This next session, if you want to wrap it up in an hour, is going to take quite some time, so
yeah.
the original
no,
appointment
I got you.
chiefs, and I'm not saying we should quit, I'm just saying this is going to be,
This one's going to take an hour by itself.
this May.
I agree.
Understand.
That's not what I wanted to do. And Tom did send me some language yesterday on that, which I got a chance to read through. So I'll just share some of that verbally. I think this made a lot of sense. So the paragraph that starts, the commission will appoint a screening committee, et cetera, et cetera.
Strike.
Tom's revision was to shrink that down to, the commission will appoint a screening committee to screen candidates and determine who will proceed to the interview phase of the process. Everything else taken out, not the consisting of up to this and this and this and this. So basically, part of the first line, part of the second to last line, and all of the last line. I just attended this attorney's conference last week, and a friend of mine did a presentation on ordinance writing. And the current thought process, sort of state of the art on writing law, writing ordinances and all that, is use simple, natural language, say what you need to say, don't say other stuff. You'll appoint a screening committee to screen candidates and determine who moves to the interview phase. You can put on it whoever you like at the time. I think that works just fine. So,
I like that language.
yeah, and, looking at the very next sentence, he had, let's remove the first sentence, let's add a new sentence, remove another sentence, and add a new sentence. So the resulting version would be, the full commission will determine the appropriate interview process and participating interview panel members by majority vote. Interview panels may include local officials and community members. However, all interview panels shall be proctored by at least 1 commissioner. That works to me. I mean, I would even say you might not even have to say by majority vote. It doesn't hurt to have that in there, but yeah, I mean, that takes all the crazy nonsense out and but also preserves the flexibility and authority of this body to determine how this will go.
Can you just, because we're at the hour mark, can you forward that to all of us?
Yep.
And then we'll just take a look at it, and we can move on, because this is a good place to stop for the day. We'll just move on from this section on the next one. If you can find us, do you guys want to add this onto the regular meeting, do an hour after the regular meeting, or do you want a separate?
We got
When were we scheduling that?
July 11th.
July 11th?
Yes, I spoke with Ryan.
Okay.
He said that's okay to take the room that day.
Oh, okay, so we can't do it the 3rd?
I mean, I'm okay with adding it on to that meeting. I don't know what's the consensus
Yeah,
with everybody
wasn't
else.
that the regular committee?
July 4th.
Joe's like, no.
Was the regular.
No, we can,
July 4th.
I'd rather pound it out than come here 4
We're
times
going
to
to
do it.
do the week after.
You would rather just pound it out and be here for hours and hours at a time?
I would rather we do our meeting and then we set aside, maybe we set aside another hour after the meeting to do it.
As long as we're here.
I mean, if we can, as long as our regular meeting doesn't take 3 hours.
When is your regular meeting?
11th.
July 11th at 2 p.m.
2 p.m.?
Yes.
That works for me.
What does everybody else think?
Works for me.
Works for you, works for Denise? Okay, fine, then we'll do it then. You're good with that, Bob? I know you have a schedule. You're a busy man. You're a
Because once we
popular
get
guy.
on a roll with this, it seems like it
starts
goes a
moving
little
along.
bit.
Well, I think once we get through the next part, that's going to be the very sketchiest part of this.
So next time
some
we'll start up
ways.
with section 3.
If Denise wants to be here all day on her birthday.
Are you going to send your notes?
bring you
Or
cakes.
can you just take this section
We'll bring you a
Maybe a donut, though.
and
Cake.
redo it the way you think
We'll
it
have
From the
lots
break.
of iced coffee.
Break room.
All right,
for you?
so we haven't adjourned yet, so let's wrap this up. If there's anything else, any comments pertaining to the meeting?
Well, what I was saying is back to our section 3.1, which is going to take us a while. Is it better for Logan to send us his notes or redo it like he thinks it should be redone and then send just that one section to us?
I would like to see the notes so that we don't change
Okay.
the recommendations that he took out for some reason.
Okay.
That we can see why he did it.
Okay.
That would make sense
Yeah,
to me,
that's
if
fine.
that's what everybody, yeah, okay. Anything else? Okay, then we're adjourned. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.